Welcome back, everybody. I'm Naha, and this is 30 Days of Tarot. Now, the deck that we're going to be opening up today, this is one that has flown under my radar for a long time. It just is not something that ever really caught my eye. I'm sure that I'd seen it because it is something that's been out for a long time. But, you know, when I'm looking for decks, a lot of times I'm looking for those older, super esoteric, almost the more mysterious, the better, the kind of timeless decks, the really cool artistic decks that maybe are a little bit edgier. And I tend to stay away from the stuff that maybe is a little bit more new agey. And I think that maybe that's what I had seen in this deck when I had just kind of glanced at it. But as I was doing some research over the years, I started to hear references to this deck again and again. And so I did start looking at it and learning that it was actually a deck that was based on the Kabbalah. Although, again, you might not think that when you just first take a glance at it. If anything, I think I would have guessed that it was more of maybe like a Celtic deck, or I don't know what, I guess I didn't look at it very closely, but we're going to look at it closely today. So once I realized that this was a Kabbalistic based deck that was based on the Tree of Life, I got really excited and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to look for this. And of course, it was out of print, super, super expensive. Just like the deck I showed you guys yesterday, the Gill Tarot. Now that one is out of print, and I spent a long time waiting and watching the eBay auctions until I found one that ended up going for less than $60, because I was not going to pay $125 or $200 for that deck. I just wasn't going to do it. And the same was true of this deck. I saw this deck for going well over $100, and I said, you know what, even though I like it, I'm going to hold off. I don't need to pay that much. And lo and behold, guess what? It's been re-released. So this deck originally came out in 1990, but if I'm not mistaken, I think it was just this summer that it was re-released. So I've got two packages here to open for you guys today. And one of them is the book, and one of them is the deck. This actually, I ordered it from Barnes & Noble. So, you know, where you get all your metaphysical and occult supplies. And then the book, actually, I got on eBay. Now, I don't know if the book is the original. I don't know if it was re-released at all. So let's go ahead and open the book first, as I tell you guys the name of this deck, which is called the Gill Tarot. And it is kind of a funny name for a deck, like, what, a fish gill? Well, it's actually the last name of the artist, and her name is Elizabeth Josephine Gill. So let's go ahead and get this book out. And it does look like this book is brand new. It's actually sealed. This has been put out by US Game Systems. And here you can see the cover. The archetypal images of the Gill Tarot work as a mirror reflecting one's inner self. In this unique guide to her tarot deck, Elizabeth Josephine Gill delineates a journey beyond daily experiences through the stages of the Tree of Life and shares her thoughts behind the meaning and symbolism of each card. And if you're still unfamiliar with the Tree of Life, I did show that in a few videos back, but here we have an image of that, so you can see that it is this glyph. There are 10 spheres, again corresponding to the 10 minor arcana, 1s through 10s, and there are 22 connecting paths, and those correspond to the 22 majors. The printing date on this book is 1996, so I don't know that it's been reprinted. It's kind of cool that I got it sealed though, huh? And so I'm glad I was able to pick this up, and this didn't cost very much. As you guys know, it's so interesting to me to be able to explore who the artists are, and when I can, get in contact with them and ask them questions. And for the most part, people are totally willing to answer questions. And even if they're not concerned here with my little channel or anything like that, I found that artists and creators, for the most part, are definitely responding to my inquiries and willing to share their process a little bit. But I tried to track down anything I could about this mysterious Elizabeth Josephine Gill, and I looked all over the internet. I couldn't find anything out about where she lived or who she was or what her background was. All we know is that she has some kind of an interest in the Kabbalah. Now, go ahead and take a look at the package here. It also says here on the side of the box that this deck follows the structure of the Thoth Tarot system. So that is Aleister Crowley's deck, which is also a Kabbalistic deck, also follows the Tree of Life. And a lot of the correspondences of Golden Dawn practitioners, of course, Crowley went on to become a Thalamite. And Thelema and Golden Dawn are not exactly the same, but they use a lot of the same rituals and a lot of the same correspondences. And then he went on to change some of the correspondences based on things that he had channeled. The deck he created, the Thoth Tarot with Lady Frida Harris, is a very popular deck to this day. And the correspondences in that deck, you see the words actually on the bottom of the cards, and those are correspondences which come from a mysterious tarot grimoire called Book T. And you can find that in Golden Dawn Compendium books. And I only paid $17 for this deck from Barnes & Noble, so it was a pretty good deal. Way better than paying hundreds of dollars. So although I couldn't find out anything about the artist, as usual, Stuart Kaplan came through for me. In the first volume of Encyclopedia of Tarot, lo and behold, once again, I found an interesting tidbit for the deck that we're going to look at. So on page 186, we have a little bit of information about this deck. It shows a couple of the cards, and here's what it says. The Fool, the Empress, and the Chariot by Josephine Gill in cooperation with Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki. So there was a clue that I was looking for. Again, I don't know what the cooperation is that Dolores would have been a part of, but I absolutely know who she is. She is a very, very well-respected teacher and author and leader in the Western mystery tradition. Over the years, I've read many of her books. I grabbed just a couple off the shelf that I have of hers. The Initiate's Book of Pathworking. This is the Ritual Magic Workbook. And I'll just read a little bit to you about the author. Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki is a third-generation psychic sensitive. It talks about both of her parents being third-degree initiates, that she was also trained in London at a school of dramatic art, as well as studied with some of the most amazing teachers in the Western mystery tradition. Her first training was with the Fraternity of Inner Light, which was Dion Fortune's organization. She then joined W.E. Butler and his organization, Servants of the Light, in 1972. She studied under Butler, and eventually she became his successor. And as far as I know, to this day, she is actually still the head of that organization, Servants of the Light, although I might recall that she was stepping down from that position, passing that on to the next person. She's been lecturing and traveling the world her whole life. As I said, she's written tons of books, and she has studied and worked in most traditions and learned from some of the finest teachers: Israel Regardie, William G. Gray, W.E. Butler, and Gareth Knight. And those are 4 names that take up a lot of residence populating my bookshelf over here. So she really has studied with the greats in Hermetic Kabbalah. And so you can only imagine how excited I was when I saw that she was, to some degree, a collaborator on this deck. So let's go ahead and start looking at it. And right from this image on the box, which I believe is taken off one of the cards, you can see the spheres of the Tree of Life here overlaid over this person. Now, if you weren't familiar with the Tree of Life, you might not even notice that that's what that is, but it's quite clear to me because that's my main deal. And before we even open these cards, there we see the Tree of Life as well. That might be a single card, or that might actually be what the back of the cards look like, which is actually what I hope. That would be really cool. These cards also have that kind of cool size where they're sort of square. They're wider than your standard cards. And oh yay, that is the back of the cards. I'm excited about that because I love this image. So we see the 10 spheres, and the bottom sphere actually is this. This is the 10th sphere, and it becomes the actual world. And then each of the spheres corresponding not only to a number, but also to a planet. And so we talked about that a little bit yesterday in the Balby video, that we saw that the number 4, now you count the spheres from the top, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4. That 4 would correspond to Jupiter, and then here we have Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. We also have the Hebrew alphabet going down the 2 sides here. We see a depiction of the 4 suits up above, the crown at the top, and down at the bottom it says, "And I see men as trees walking." We have the 2 pillars, and then this tree in the middle serves as the middle pillar. Now the first card looks like this, and it says Layout Guide. And again, this is the order of the spheres. So now you can see which order they go in, that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they just kind of zigzag down like this. This zigzag is called the lightning flash. So I'm guessing that what she intends for you to do is to lay the cards out, lay out a 10 card spread in that order. And that's something that actually is also described in this book. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so what Dolores suggests that you do is that you actually take the cards and that you lay them out in the temple. So you would place them on the floor and you would walk from one card to the next, and as you walk to each spot you would turn the card over, so it's as if you're walking across the lightning flash. It's kind of a cool way to do it, right? So when you pick up the first card, it says, "This is the beginning of my journey to the truth." Then you walk to the second station, you pick up the card and it says, "This is the line of thought that leads me on." The third one is, "This card shows the root of my problem," and so on. So I'm curious to see if that's what Gill also suggests. I did just catch a glimpse of this. She mentions Robert Wang's The Kabbalistic Tarot, a book that I have shown you in other videos that I highly recommend. Interestingly, she actually talks about the cards in order from 10 to 1 instead of 1 to 10. So 10 would be starting at the bottom of the tree, which refers to you at the present within your physical body and external circumstances. And then 9 represents the subconscious. Remember, it had the moon on it and shows what lies behind the situation. So she suggests starting down at the bottom and working up, while Dolores talked about starting at the top and working down. It's interesting, right? We actually use both of those approaches of the Tree of Life in my school. We work from the top down when we do practices like middle pillar, and we bring light down, invoke it into the body. We'll do that tonight because tonight's our monthly healing ritual. And also when we go through our rituals in the Arboretum Mysticum, we start with the top of the tree where we have the Fool, and then we go through the Magician, and we're basically going down the tree, going through the major arcana in order. But then as we're doing path working, which is guided astral travel into the different paths and areas of the tree, we start down at the bottom and we work our way back up. Now, as the energy descends down the tree in a lightning flash, it winds back up the tree like a snake. Sort of similar to how in the East they have the symbol of the snake as the rising of Kundalini. So let's look at these cards. Here is the Fool. Now this deck came out originally, I think I said already, in 1990. But when I first saw these, I would have guessed that this was more of like a 70s deck. And can you guys see why? It has a little bit of that fantasy look to it. That's a really powerful priestess actually, with the deepness of that portal behind her. There's the Empress. One thing that I'm kind of getting the feel of already is that these cards could benefit by having the edges removed. Have you guys seen anybody do that? I was watching on one of the videos of Hermit's Cave, another tarot channel that I really like, where he cut the edges off a deck, and you can do that if you have a corner trimmer, which is just a little piece you get from Amazon, and you have a paper cutter. And it just really opens up the cards when you take away the borders. And because I didn't pay too much for this deck and it's still available, I think that I actually might try it on here. There's something else that these cards remind me of, which is other decks that were created in the Golden Dawn lineage. Oh my God, what a great hermit. Isn't that beautiful? I love that you can't tell whether it's a male or a female figure. It just doesn't matter, right? So there's a few different Golden Dawn decks that have come out. There's one actually by Wang, who wrote Kabbalistic Tarot. Him and Israel Regardie put out their own Golden Dawn tarot deck many years ago. And then the Ciceros, who have written tons of material on magic and on the Golden Dawn, they've put one out as well. I really, really like this Hanged Man. I'll tell you, they give me a little bit of like a Jim Henson vibe. Are you guys getting that? I mean, maybe it's because this image, it's like, it reminds me of the Rainbow Connection. This is good. So it's just funny to me that at first I just kind of overlooked these, and I thought, I don't know if the imagery really speaks to me, but now that I'm seeing them, I really do like them. And I like also how the way that she has, I remember seeing this. What a powerful star. This reminds me, in my Developing Intuition course, the Psychic Protection class, we do this pyramid of protection that you place around yourself. And this actually looks like an amazing astral sacred geometry version of that. I'm gonna have to take this to class and show it to my students. But I was saying, I like the way that she has placed the words down at the bottom. She's actually illustrated the names rather than just having them graphically on there, which can sometimes detract from the image. That's a really beautiful Judgment. And then the World. This is kind of silly to me. Woo! I don't know that I'm really feeling that one. So whenever you have these kind of fantasy cards, I think that that's what it is like sometimes there's kind of like a little bit of silliness or cheesiness to it that I don't absolutely love, but I can look past some of that for these, and I really do think that they're pretty awesome. So of course these are the court cards corresponding to swords. Now here, I guess we're counting down backwards, because here's the 10 of swords, and it says down here desolation, and the 9 despair. It's a powerful image, but I don't know how I feel about this giant number here. And I know that this is the motif for the minor cards, that we see this giant number. I don't mind it so much there because it becomes kind of a symbol more than it does a number. And the fact that she has these words down here, this is one of the things that I don't like about using the Thoth deck when I'm reading for clients, because the Thoth deck does the same thing. It places a single word down at the bottom of a really beautiful image. Now, this image by itself is amazing, right? But when you put a word like this on a card, what happens is if you're doing a reading for somebody else, they're going to instantly look at that word and they're going to start interpreting it for themselves. And sometimes there's so much more going on that needs to be conveyed than just the single word, that I've really found that it doesn't always give me the opportunity to tell the message that I want to convey to the person, because they're just looking down at this card that says desolation and they're just fixating on that word. And I really believe that especially the challenging cards, they're not just there to tell you, oh, this is going to be a terrible situation and you're just going to have to suffer. And you've heard me talk about this in other videos. Those challenging cards are there to say, look, this is a situation that needs an adjustment, needs a change. What a gorgeous Princess of Wands here. Now this is similar to the Thoth deck, but a little bit different. So in the Thoth deck, the kings are called knights, the queens are queens, the knights are called princes, and the pages are called princesses. So what it's conveying is a higher masculine and feminine in knight and queen, and then a lower masculine and feminine in princes and princesses, kind of like the mother, father, son, and daughter. So I think that's the same method that we used here, but they don't actually spell out. She did this, maybe this was very convenient for her to not make people more confused. So she just put K and Q on king and queen, but that could easily be knight and queen. And then we have the prince and the princess. Really loving that one though. Transformation, the phoenix. So these are weird, the minor cards. I do like the idea that the actual number becomes more of a visual symbol. That's kind of cool in its three-dimensionality. And it looks like she has similar kind of keywords to the Thoth deck. The 8 of Wands on that deck says swiftness. Here it says speed. And so some of these, as you can see, have figures on them. I really love that victory. That's beautiful. And I do think that the symbols of the numbers lend themselves to remind us a little bit more of the planets which they correspond to. For instance, 4 corresponding to Jupiter, and it looks very much like the planetary symbol of Jupiter. 3 corresponding to Saturn, and it looks very similar to the planetary sigil of Saturn. And there is the 2 and the ace. Now let's look at the cups, and here are going to be the court cards of the cups. The undines, those are the water elementals there. And unlike the last deck that we looked at, now we see water once more corresponding to the suit of cups, just like it makes the most sense, right? She's really outdone herself with the 6s, all of the 6s, which correspond to the very center of the tree. So if you see, again, on the tree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is the very center, and it corresponds to the sun. So it's the center of our solar system. In the human body, it's the center of your body. It's your solar plexus. It's the middle of all things. And so that's part of the reason why when you have a Kabbalistic interpretation of a 6, it speaks about symmetry and balance, and where things have been kind of off on one side or the other, bringing them back to a center point. So there's a lot of harmony typically when you look at all of the 6s. And there's a lot of difficulty when you look at the 5s. Now, is there difficulty? Because look what sphere and planet corresponds to 5. See this red sphere? It's the planet Mars. Mars is the god of war. So if you want to consider why all of those 5s, look at any tarot deck and you'll see the 5 of Cups, the cups are all spilled over. The 5 of Swords, they're having a fight and an argument. The 5 of Wands, they're getting into all kinds of drama. And there is that Mars influence or that Martian influence. These are very, very different. I don't think that the approach mirrors any other deck, so I think that it's very unique. Now we're going to look at the Pentacles, and you can see they're all very earthy there. And it's kind of interesting that we also see keywords on the Court cards. I find that to be interesting. I kind of like also that we're going through the deck backwards. That's kind of fun, right? There we see the 8, 7. Again, a beautiful 6. 5 always having a little bit of implied pentagram there, right? There's an interesting 4, the bullseye, the 3, and there's the ace. So I'm excited about these. I think that they're a great addition to my collection. I wouldn't say that I'm absolutely in love with all of the minors, but I appreciate them for the fact that they look different. They don't look like any other deck that I have. I really, really love the majors, and I'm looking forward to reading the book and seeing what more she has to say about all of these. Let's go ahead and do a 1-card pull. So as I'm shuffling, I'd like you to just go ahead and get yourself nice and centered, and let's ask a question about what it is that we need to know for the next phase that we're going to be entering into. So just as we move out of October and into this next month, not like far, far away, but something that is coming up for us shortly. So as always, I'm going to cut with my non-dominant hand. And here is our message for the next phase. 4 of what? I'm not even sure. Is this Pentacles? It says order. Let's look it up in the book. But I get the message already as far as what it is. So maybe it's a good thing that it has the words on it. I just can't tell if that's Pentacles or if that's Wands. Okay, yes, 4 of Discs. And she speaks here about the color of the background being the color of Asya and Kesed. And that means the material world, which is the world of discs, in the sphere Kesed, which is the blue sphere of Jupiter on the tree. To order a kingdom is to arrange and administer it. In this case, order is demonstrated by the circle, a symbol of wholeness. The black and white sections suggest a sorting process, rather like a jigsaw. This picture implies that in ordering our own kingdoms, we need not only try to reach the center, the target, and orient the kingdom around it, but to put our physical attention into the sorting out of the self. Black and white, good and bad, higher and lower, virtue and vice, sections need to be assessed, measured, and fitted together before a whole figure can emerge. I understand. And I think that that is a fantastic kind of attitude to be taking as we move forward, especially towards the end of the year. So getting our own personal houses, or as she says, kingdoms in order, and sorting things out, putting things where they need to be, and recognizing that we need to have balance in the physical realm. And that means order in the home, in the physical body, in our real world life, right? Well, thank you guys again so much for being here, for taking a look at the very cool Gill Tarot. I will leave links down below where you guys can get it, and also if I can find links for the book, I will leave that as well. Remember, tomorrow is the day that I have a great big huge announcement that I'll be making. So come back then and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.